Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. We're going to get started with our next session, which is our spotlight on electronics, designing circularity at scale, a conversation with Samsung's sustainability leaders. Just a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. As with every ReMA event and meeting, we are abiding by ReMA's antitrust policy and code of conduct, so you'll find information about that on your seats as well as in our app. Make sure if this is your first session, take a look at the app. There's also the emergency response plan. Familiarize yourself with that for safety, which is, of course, ReMA's core value. And with that, I'll hand it off to our moderator, David Daoud, with compliance standards.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. David Daoud here from Compliance Standards. I'm an analyst that covers sustainability, generally in the IT field, from cradle to grave. And, I am here today to basically close the session, I think, for this room. I think we're probably the last session. And, but we're going to be as fast as possible because one of our guests here just flew out of Korea, I think. So, quick introductions here. With me are two executives from Samsung that cover sustainability, circularity, etc. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I think it's probably the easiest way to do that. First, Daniel, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Daniel Araujo. I flew in from Korea yesterday. I've been with Samsung for about 14 years in Korea. Before that, spent some time in New York. Mostly worked in M&A for a lot of that time, but came to our mobile business. It's called Mobile Experience, or MX, about 2.5 years ago. So probably a lot of you know a lot more about recycling and sustainability than I do. But in my current role, I'm responsible in that mobile division for strategic investments into startups, for investor relations or our quarterly earnings calls, and sustainability. So the various efforts that we're doing there, whether it's putting more recycled materials into our devices, using more renewable energy, and reducing carbon emissions across our value chain, and the other efforts that we're doing within mobile. So nice to meet you.
And Jenni Chun as well.
Hi, my name is Jenni Chun. I head the Regulatory and Environmental Affairs team in North America. So my team is responsible for all the environmental regulations and beyond on voluntary standards and leadership, such as the recognitions. And I've been with Samsung about 13 years now. But prior to that, I was still also in the electronics industry for 6 years. So I know I look younger than I am. But quite some years ahead. My team focuses, so we collaborate closely with the corporate sustainability roles. My team focuses more on the product aspect and the operations of our programs in North America.
Thank you. Thank you both. So before we start the conversation, I just wanted to take a moment to frame why today's discussion with Samsung matters. By the way, not just for this room, but for the broader sustainability and circularity dialogue across all sorts of industries. Now, Samsung, as you guys know, is not just another technology company. It's one of the largest and one of the most influential industrial groups in the world. And it does that across a variety of sectors: electronics, semiconductors, appliances, display panels, etc. It touches nearly every layer of the global technology landscape. Last year, in 2024, Samsung Electronics generated over $200 billion in revenue. I would say more like $250 billion in revenue. And it's operating in about 70 countries, if I get my numbers right. So nowhere is Samsung's impact more visible than in mobility, where these two executives come from. Samsung is one of the top 2 smartphone manufacturers, as you know, globally. And it's for people that track market share and things like that. They often trade places with Apple for the number 1 spot, depending on the quarter. And last year, for instance, we're talking about 250 million smartphones that were shipped by Samsung, which means 1 out of every 5 smartphones sold worldwide had the name of Samsung. Now, obviously, that scale brings incredible reach but it also brings responsibility. And the sheer volume of devices Samsung puts into the world means that what the company decides to do around product design, materials, repair, reuse, recycling, things that we've been talking about, doesn't just affect its supply chain or its own operation. It obviously influences global standards. It influences partner ecosystems. It influences consumer habits and obviously policy discussions around circular economy. So today's conversation, just to reiterate, is not just a company briefing that, your standard analyst likes to have. It's more like a window into how one of the most powerful players in the electronic sector is thinking about sustainability and how it's acting on that responsibility, from the mining of materials to the collection of discarded phones, and from carbon targets to next generation product stewardship. So let's dive in. These questions are open to both of you. However, I'm going to start with you, Jenni. How did sustainability become sort of an embedded thing into Samsung's operation? What has been your personal role in that journey?
Sure. And let me first start by saying that what I share here is not an official position of Samsung, but more an anecdote and sharing of my personal, testimony and experiences through my career within Samsung. So that way I can say something, a little bit more provocative or bolder, if you will. But I do want to start by saying that Samsung, I know it sounds like a cliche, but sustainability really is skin deep. And I want to take you a little bit at the history of Samsung's presence in North America. So we're going to probably be kind of bouncing back and forth on our corporate, overall Samsung as a global policy and strategy, as well as my personal experience of leading the North America programs and market. And in North America, for many of the electronic devices you all probably owned, and including myself, Samsung was probably not the first brand you've owned. In fact, all of my electronics and appliances that I own, the first device ever was never a Samsung brand. So looking at Samsung into the North America market was relatively very young. It's coming to against many of the known brands in the market. So we had to find a strength of where consumers find benefit. And one of those ways was in our energy efficiency. I mean, all of our products plug in, so they all draw, energy. So for us, the GHG, the carbon emissions and climate change mitigations were all very easy to understand and take on initially. And I think we also have the privilege of Samsung being headquartered in Korea, comes with just in nature the limited resource that they have to be very efficient in all of our operations. So that we've demonstrated that through our product commitments, where each of the products we had very strong energy efficiency, and this resonated really well with consumers because the consumers all had direct value and benefit in their hands by saving their energy bills and in other ways. I think it really was until in 2020 when we reached about our decade of our GHG emission milestone, where we started to review our goals and to look at for another set of next decade of long-term strategy. We saw that we've reached our GHG, but we've also been doing so much in other areas of sustainability, including recycling, including looking at a transition in renewable energy, or in looking at hazardous materials and alternative materials. So what we learned from looking at these key performances were that they were quite separated. And then it was really so in 2021 and to 2022, the board approved to establish a sustainability council at the corporate level. And this set a more an alignment of governance where each of so Samsung, we're so large that within our company we've got a set of different companies and we refer to them as business units. And actually we have the privilege, Daniel is representing one of those business unit as a sustainability lead executive of that branch, that business unit. But so we have that kind of an office for each of the business unit. And then at the corporate level, there's a kind of a governance that helps to align all of our goals in collaboration with the global EHS. And then expanding on that, we've also established Sustainability Council in the regional offices. So I sit on the Sustainability Council for the North America and U.S. Samsung subsidiary.
Maybe I'll just add a little more just from our mobile business. We've been collecting, first of all, our company has been collecting used electronics for over 15 years. We've been using recycled materials in our devices for almost 10 years. But really a lot of this action and a lot of the change doesn't happen without buy-in from the top, from our CEO. Because unfortunately, doing more sustainable kind of action or using recycled materials means more money. It means more costs. Right. So this doesn't happen without buy-in from the top. But I think our management has been, aligned with this for several reasons. Of course, there's the, kind of doing more good for the world, lessening our impact on the environment. There's also shifting consumer preferences for products that do less damage to the environment. We also have a lot of pressure from regulators and from our customers, especially the European carriers. U.S. not so much lately, but of course I expect that to change very soon. So in 2021, we announced a new Galaxy for the Planet strategy within our division to help keep ourselves accountable. So as part of that, we had 4 separate goals to achieve by this year. So one was to put recycled materials in every one of our Galaxy products, which we already accomplished. So we set a new, more aggressive target. We are reducing or eliminating all the one-use plastics, single-use plastics from our packaging, which we've almost accomplished, I think, except for in like 2 different markets. We are improving the energy efficiency of our products, including what we call the standby power consumption. So when you have your charger plugged into the wall, but it's not charging your phone, it's still using electricity. So we've got that down to almost 0. And we've been trying to accomplish 0 waste to landfill for our sites. So whereas before the waste from our production facilities around the world might have gone to a landfill or might have been incinerated, now it's being transformed into recycled fuels or raw materials for cement and other materials. So we have a lot of different initiatives going on, including at our corporate level with goals for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions and throughout our supply chain.
And I should add one point, as since Daniel mentioned, and one appreciation for our leadership is that we really do have that accountability within our leadership down to each of the individuals that contribute to the sustainability task. I don't know how many companies out there where our CEO is accountable for the company reaching its environmental goals, and they can't get their bonus otherwise. So we get quarterly contacts and making sure that we're on our milestone to reach the aggressive goals that we've set ourselves each year. Yeah. And that's how, from the top level to all the personnel and staff.
Yeah, sustainability is part of every executive's KPIs, even if that's not something that you directly handle.
Now, is this specific to Samsung, or is it part of the Korean culture? I mean, other companies, CEOs having the same sort of KPIs?
I don't think so. I think, I want to say that we've been the leader in Korea. I'm not, I haven't done research on that, but Samsung does, given our status as a global company, we do tend to move, I think, faster than other companies there. A lot of that is due to our presence in Europe and in the US and just having to respond to consumer trends.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the issues as an independent analyst that I face quite often is when you meet with companies, including many OEMs, it's very difficult to understand their circular economy story. How does Samsung define circular economy? What is it? Is it about materials? Is it about systems? Is it about behavior? What is the circular economy?
So, I mean, I think in this room, everybody, I'm probably preaching to the choir for the definition of circular economy, where you're taking the life cycle of the entire product from its very raw material and sourcing to product design and production, manufacturing to transportation and down to into the consumer's hands, and then disposal and recycling after, right? We often use like that cradle to cradle, cradle to grave, now cradle to cradle kind of a concept. But within Samsung, what to me is a privilege to be working for is that I've seen such an evolved concept of circular economy. And what I mean by that is throughout that product journey, we've emphasized on different things. So earlier I mentioned how Samsung first entered into some of these, emerging and new markets with energy efficient products. So that was more focused on the product performance at the use phase. Then we started looking at the materials that we use in them. So we started reducing and eliminating the hazardous materials, looking at alternative materials, right? And then, and now we know that, there are, as more of the sourcing is available to us, we're looking at recycled materials, right? And making sure that it's now post-consumer, not just pre-consumer, but the products that we can collect back from recycling, making sure they go back into the same product. And you'll later hear an amazing story that I think David's team has led. And I don't want to break the thunder on his story. But then looking at and how the better practice of collection and collecting the recycled sourcing, that it's sufficient to put the same recycled product back. Before, I think the recycled materials were from any industry, and now we're trying to channel and focus that the same Galaxy phone that a consumer used to make sure that we can collect it back and use it back onto a new or renewed Galaxy phone is, I think, now what we're really trying to learn of a full circle around, and that's the word circular.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe this question is for you, Danielle. Can you share an overview of Samsung's DX e-waste collection efforts and how that fits within the company's broader strategies, particularly environmental strategies?
Yeah, sure. So we've been collecting e-waste since I think the late 2000s. We're doing it in 80 different countries around the world. And it's not only Samsung products, we've taken products from other companies too. And sometimes we do that directly, depending on the country infrastructure. Other times we partner with local companies, as I think we do in the US. We've collected, I think it's about 6.4 million tons of e-waste as of 2023. Maybe 500,000 of that was in the US. And it's our goal to increase this to 180 countries by 2030. So basically any country that our products are sold in, and collect, I think, 10 million tons by then.
Wow, pretty impressive. And specific to the Galaxy S24 series, it does integrate, recycled cobalt, rare earth, aluminum, and more. What kind of supply chain or engineering changes were required to make that kind of situation happen?
Yeah, so in the S24, we included recycled cobalt for the first time and recycled rare earth metals. We only had 10% of the cobalt was recycled for that one. This year, our new flagship device is the S25. So now it's at least 50% of the cobalt in the battery is recycled. And for the S25 specifically, the cobalt contains cobalt sourced from old Samsung smartphones. So we have to make a lot of changes for that to happen. Batteries are collected either from old Samsung devices or maybe they were defective devices or whatever in our production facility. So we had over 200 million tons of batteries in our Vietnam facilities. Then they go through a process to make them safe to handle, right? Like you have to get put in the liquid for 5 days. You have to punch a hole in the battery. Then it gets ground up into what's called black mass, which is a black powder that contains valuable metals. From there, we can extract the cobalt. That gets manufactured into a cathode material, which then becomes part of the battery in the new phone. But that's not all done by us. We have 6 other companies that are our partners, and they're in 4 different geographies. So Singapore, China, Korea, and Vietnam. So that requires a lot of coordination. We have a very strict timeline for our product releases, right? So we had to keep in mind the lead times, the marine transport, making sure that the batteries match the performance of our existing batteries. There are also issues like in most countries you can't export these used batteries. These used batteries are waste, right? So you can't export waste without the government permits.
Yeah.
So we have to find the right companies that have those permits or were willing to go through that process that would help us. So it was not easy. Also, the only reason that I can talk to you about this is because we got the certifications, right? Mm-hmm. So previously, after we make our phone, we just get certification for the one product. Like this has a certain percentage of recycled plastic, aluminum, glass, whatever. But for this, we had to get every one of those 6 companies audited, and you all to go through the entire value chain to certify that yes, this cobalt, came from Galaxy products.
Yeah, you mentioned S25, and from what I understand, now it does incorporate closed loop cobalt recycling. Mm-hmm. Have you learned anything, or have you learned more on how to sort of build a fully circular process within that product family?
Yeah, so it's mostly, I think, what I just mentioned. We've seen the technology related to recycling really improve. I think as us and as other companies are doing more here, the technology to extract the minerals and to put it into new products is getting better. We learned a lot in terms of working with our value chain. And I think lastly, in terms of, we can't even do this unless we get the used devices from our customers. So we have to do a lot in terms of customer engagement. And we have a lot of programs around that, like trade-in programs where people get reimbursed for their old devices, our e-waste collection program.
Yeah, and since we're in a recycling conference, what are sort of the practical benefits that that you see from using recycled materials in product design compared to using, I guess, virgin products or virgin material?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I guess it's kind of obvious, but it's just you're not impacting the planet by not using the virgin materials. Of course, there's a marketing story there that maybe is important for some customers. I hope for more and more customers as time goes on. Like I mentioned earlier, it does increase the cost for us. So it's a conscious choice that we make.
And it using recycled material doesn't degrade the product's performance?
Oh, absolutely not. No, we hold our products to very rigorous testing standards. We make sure that the batteries work just as well as any battery that use virgin material as well.
Yeah, because that's a very important point that needs to be, general public needs to be informed for sure.
Yeah, sorry, and just to add on to that, I mean, part of the reason why we're not using 100% recycled plastic yet is because of that. At this point with today's technology, if we were to use 100% recycled plastic, it would not meet the same standards. If we use 100% recycled aluminum, it wouldn't be as durable as the products we make today. But we're trying to get there.
I read somewhere that you have something called Circular Economy Lab. What is it, and what breakthrough innovations might emerge from that particular unit in the next few years, if I can probe that?
Yeah, so that's a unit we set up to comprehensively research recycling any technology around extracting materials and putting that into new devices. So they set up processes around our company to do that. And the big focus of their work is to, as they sort the different waste that comes from Samsung facilities, to avoid contamination. Because the lower the contamination is, the more pure of a material you have to then recycle and put into new devices. And so thanks to that, we've been able to get our zero waste to landfill certifications.
Yeah. So I cover mostly enterprise IT recycling, but I'm curious, Jenni, what strategies have proven most effective, in sort of trying to increase consumer participation in Samsung recycling programs specifically? As I said, my background is mostly enterprise, but I've always, tried to figure out how it works in the consumer world. Can you share some insights?
Sure. We have for many years already provide an easy way of recycling to consumers. There's easy mail-in option. We actually have about 2,000 drop-off locations through our partners and a network of partner locations that makes available to all the consumer locations. But really, I think those what we actually collect from those channels are much less than a trade-in, let's say. And so what we recently learned was that many, and I'm sure you've all read studies where people, if you ask them a question, would you like to would you like to participate or have a behavior that contributes to sustainability? Everyone says yes. But if you do a follow-up survey of the actual action, then there's none that really connects. So sometimes it's more conceptual than what can I really do. But what really does matter for consumers is the incentives that they get. So if through a trade-in, you're now, someone who's going to want the bells and whistles, the best of the product, right, out in the market. But if their device is still functional and it still has a lifespan, and now that they can directly see how much value there's still left on it, it encourages them to hand back in, trade in. So we're preventing from more of these dead phones just sitting in the drawers. I mean, I'm guilty of those as well from the older devices. And we also provide very easy, seamless transition of the devices, so that all of your contents, right, you're not jeopardizing any of that experience of losing. I think the nostalgia or the emotional connection to that device onto when you switch to a new device, that you can now have value that is added towards purchasing a new device. And so recently what we did was we married that concept of the trade-in with the option of recycling. So have maybe a consumer learned that their device either has very minimal or to no value left, because either the device is really outdated or whatever reason, they now are easily referred to an instruction on how to recycle it properly. So that now, someone who may have come without a sustainability in mind can somehow have the opportunity to learn another messaging or opportunity to contribute to sustainability and lessen the environmental impact. And then I think with that lessons, we also really promote what we call CRN, certified renewed device. We intentionally, I love the terminology, we call it renewed, because I think the concept of refurbish, sometimes consumers think that the refurbish are second class, right? You're jeopardizing or you're compromising some type of quality of the device because it's refurbished. So we like to call it, we give a new and a new life, where you're now, and we have a very rigorous procedure in developing these renewed devices. They undergo all the same quality check, quality control certifications as a new device. And any of the replaceable parts, we use 100% genuine parts. So we think that we really set as a differentiator in offering these certified renewed devices as well, where it still gives life to the major components, in addition to the new battery life that the consumer does not have to compromise, and being able to have it with a lower price point.
And just one quick example from Korea too. This year we started something called the New Galaxy AI Subscription Club. It's a subscription where people get extra types of care and repair for their device, but also when you sign up for it, you get some kind of guaranteed what we call residual value for device. So if you use your device for 1 year and then you trade it in, you're guaranteed to get like at least 50% of the value. If you use it for 2 years, you get like 40% of the value. So this incentivizes customers to be actually about 20% of most who pre-ordered our phone signed up for this. So they're incentivized to trade in their device when the time comes.
Yeah, and admittedly, I don't know about you guys, but I have probably half a dozen old PCs in my home. And part of it is, where do I go? I mean, I have this is not specific to phones.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? I have one phone and it's been around with me for a while, but on the PC side, it's pretty disastrous. I mean, part of it is you don't know where to go. Part of it is multiple brands. So you don't know if the other thing, you're going to go to Best Buy. There's a fear that Best Buy is going to push back or is going to want some money. But I'm curious from your research, do you have any insight as what motivates participation, or the opposite? People like me who on the PC side are still pretty hesitant because we're not doing enough research, I guess, to find out how to do that. Any insights on the phone side?
So PCs, or actually also maybe expanding onto like the TVs, the bulkier electronics are definitely tricky. If they're big enough that they create a nuisance, I think is when people are like, okay, I want to get rid of it because it's sitting there, it's taking my garage space or it's taking my basement space. Then I think people seek out for, different, pathways like, and we provide a very easy, locator. So any, a consumer can come to our locator and drop off. And in fact, through our locator, when you find a drop-off locator, we're not accepting just Samsung brand. We do offer for any brands that are accepted at those locations. But I think it definitely becomes tricky. And some sit on it, and I mean, we do also offer mail in to a certain pounds, and as well as pickup for the larger devices as well.
Yeah. In Korea, actually, if you order a Samsung device like a washing machine or TV or whatever, like people will come to your house to install it, and then they ask you, "Oh, do you want us to recycle your old one?" So, especially if it's something that doesn't work well, they're right there. You can just say yes, and it goes away. So, I think there's a very high percentage of participation.
The free haul away is definitely also
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe it's for you, Danielle. I know, this is sort of shifting to the repair world, right? In the repair world, have you encountered any quality control or data security concerns when you use third party, which you must be using a lot of them, repair providers?
From the consumer point of view, we have a repair mode function, it's on every one of our phones. So if you turn that on, somebody can use your phone without having to unlock it, but then they won't be able to access your pictures and video and accounts, emails, or whatever. So people can do that very safely. And then we also offer our customers the option of self-repair. So they can just, if it's something that we have the part for online, then they can do it themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Jenni, quick question for you on if you could sort of shed some light on the Earth Eye GPS tracking to monitor e-waste. I know Samsung adopted it. What is it? I'm excited to hear about what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, so Samsung, we are one of the early or first of companies that are part of the eStore enterprise, which is basically a company that is committed to partnering with recyclers that have eStore certification. And so far we believe that is one of the highest standards in handling recycling. Especially because it bans from exporting, non-functional, not workable devices to developing countries. And as part of that partnership and support for the NGO that helped develop the standard ban, have created an Earth Eye tracker program, which we also joined and participated since its onset 2018. And since then, every year we randomly select 40 devices, 40 trackers, GPS trackers in random places of drop-off locations. And then we use that to detect where they go. And that helps us to monitor all the way to the downstream, and make sure that when we audit our recyclers thereafter, that what we see on paper really does follow through for what we see on those GPS trackers.
And I know you probably would say that's corporate secret, but have you any insight on something that's unexpected?
And I don't know if I'm being videotaped, but we have discovered certain signals that did really alert us. So then we track right away to investigate what they were, and thankfully some of them found that they were either a false signal or something that we were able to resolve and not mishandled hoping to the standard that we would have expected from our vendors that are holding up to these store certifications.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving into compliance with regulations, and I know it's for most people that I talk to, it's often a nightmare to figure out from country to country, let alone from state to state. How does Samsung tackle sort of all this patchwork of regulations that are everywhere, different, both internationally and locally? And second question, how do you manage that? Do you have like centralized process, or do you have sort of in each country, perhaps even each region within the US that deal with compliance?
So kind of from earlier when I laid out on the sustainability governance, we definitely have a corporate office where we also contribute as part of our North America. And I probably couldn't speak to how some of our other international countries, but at least I can definitely speak to the headache of the individual states that exist in U.S. map, as you all probably are aware of. And in fact, we have seen in more recent years some challenges to those collection and to meet those what we call target mandates. So some states actually put an exact target of how much that Samsung needs to collect and be responsible for. And I mean, we sometimes definitely go and pull an arm and a leg and put that extra effort, put that extra locations or collection events, and still sometimes run into challenges of shortage collection. And I think part of that is the whole transition of we really are phased out of the chubby fat CRT TVs. They were the mainstream of what we collected back in the last couple decades, and that helped us fulfill that volume because the newer devices were lighter versus some of the ones that were coming back. But now, those are kind of pretty much almost all gone. And I think even from a recent state data that we saw, showed, I think not even 10% of the collection that's coming back are CRTs. So overall, so some of those states were really having a hard time, gathering those volumes.
And so you have sort of both extremes, right? I mean, two extremes, right? You have overregulated and underregulated. Yeah. And is it tough to deal with both cases?
Can you elaborate a little bit on
Well, you have some states where regulation is very critical. California, for instance, is one of them. And then you have states where regulation just doesn't exist.
Sure, absolutely. And of course, we also have, packaging regulations coming under our way, that will add to that over and under extremes. And I think this is why partners and stakeholders are very important in the process of communication. Sometimes the state regulators are sitting in front of and just reading literally from the context of the legislation, where so through our recycling partners are the ones that are on the grounds and understanding exactly the context of what's happening in that state, or even more locally in the regions, informing us. And I think that all of that needs to happen more in communication with those individual states, so that there's much more transparent understanding of the e-waste stream.
I think also in general we just try to adhere to the most strict type of regulation. Like in Europe, we're dealing with EU Eco-Design Initiative, which has a lot of requirements to minimize environmental impact from the whole product life cycle viewpoint. So making products more energy efficient, using more recycled materials, making products last a lot longer. And it's not like we're designing different products for Europe than we are for South America or Asia or the US. So we just try to meet the standards that are in place and put that implement that worldwide.
Any sort of emerging international standard or voluntary standards that you guys are seeing or actively supporting? EU, around the world, in Asia, and Canada, Australia. Any of these standards that you guys are currently actively supporting?
I mean, I don't have a list, but we support all the ISO standards that we have to. That's all on our website. There are a lot of emerging European standards that we're monitoring and making sure that we'll be compliant with when they roll out.
I mean, as Daniel mentioned, we are a global company. So even though U.S. unfortunately is not part of the Basel Convention, as currently we still are supportive of the Basel Convention of the control of transboundary movements of hazardous waste and their disposal. And it does make it quite tricky for how do we address this with our vendors. We understand that regardless of where U.S. As a political state stands, we as a company and a global company with a global footprint have responsibility. So what we carry and how our partners handle those recycling definitely has a global impact with other transboundaries. So we do it. I know it's sensitive, but it is definitely a conversation that we do really put out on the table with our recyclers.
Yeah, thank you. So there's been a lot of talk about ESG. And I'm curious, what's the biggest operational or even cultural challenges to achieve a Samsung DX goal of net zero scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030? And I think that's probably an area of your expertise, right, Danny?
Yeah. So our goal is to get to net zero scope 1 and scope 2 by 2030 for the device experience division. So that's basically anything that's not semiconductor. Semiconductors is 2050, mainly because of the state of renewable energy in Korea is very challenging due to the geography, due to the monopolistic energy type of infrastructure. But no, I think we're well on the way. I think in our most recent report, we said that 93% of our DX energy usage is from renewable sources. I think if there's one short-term challenge, maybe it's just the increasing price of renewable energy credits. Long term, we're trying to get to more PPAs, power purchase agreements. So there are some challenges overall. Of course, we see this as an opportunity just to get to where our consumers are.
Yeah, and any particular regions or sites or facilities that are more challenging than others?
Yeah, so with the renewable energy, at least for the mobile business, we're actually already using 100% RE everywhere except for our Turkey and Indonesia facilities. So, a little more work to do there. With India, I think we've also had we've been more successful getting PPAs with local solar, hydro, and thermal renewable energy producers.
Yeah, absolutely. And scope 3 is probably even more challenging, right? How do you deal with that, particularly involving third party or suppliers and then product use after sale?
Yeah, so we do have a roadmap to reduce our emissions across the value chain, throughout the supply chain too. We're reducing our electricity usage of our products by 30% through 2030, and we're well on the way there. I think, frankly, it's challenging. We have over 2,100 suppliers, and for us to have a good scope 3 emissions number, we need to have data from our suppliers.
Yeah.
And a lot of those are small suppliers, or depending on where they're based, they're not equipped to do that. Or even some of our large suppliers, let's say they're a fabless semiconductor company, they might give us emissions, but without the emissions that to create that semiconductor from TSMC or whoever it might have been. Or even if they do give us emissions data, maybe if they have several different kinds of products that they supply to us, they can't break it down on a product by product basis. So they just give us one number that then we have to figure out how to allocate that among our devices. So we have a lot of people looking at this. We know that it's very important. We also have a lot of pressure in Europe to, eventually get to a target that we can put out there. There's just a lot of data quality problems right now that we have to sort through and think through. So this is a major piece of work for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I did read a statistic that says recycled resin now is used in 25% of plastic parts. Any opportunity to move that to 100%?
Yeah, so our target is to use 100% recycled plastic or recycled resin in our plastic, 100% by 2050, 50% by 2030. And I think we got to 25% in 2023. So I think that's part of the challenge I talked about earlier where, right now the quality of the recycled material is not yet there for us, but it's been going up every year. So we think,
are there science limitations right now?
Like quality, quality limitations with how how the recycled plastic becomes. But we've been making a lot of efforts in terms of using more post-consumer materials. We talked about, I think one thing that we always talk about is the plastic that's recycled from fishing nets in the ocean, discarded fishing nets. This year, we've also been using plastic recycled from our semiconductor wafer trays that they're using in our factories. We've got plastic recycled from shoe material. So we're trying to do more and more every year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So this is kind of almost a closing question, but if we were to meet, let's say, in this venue 2 years from now, what would be sort of the big headline coming out of Samsung?
Yeah. So I think this year we'll get to announce about meeting our 2025 targets. If we're to meet in 2 years, I think I should be able to tell you that we're using 100% renewable energy across our facilities.
That's awesome.
We've been using more and more types of recycled materials. So you mentioned cobalt and rare earth metals. We have a roadmap with other types of materials, with more components in our products and a higher percentage of recycled materials. So I hope to be able to talk about that. And then we'll see about Scope 3.
And Jenni, any thoughts 2 years from now?
I don't know about 2 years, but we have a saying in the sustainability world that to measure success in sustainability is when you don't need one. So meaning there is no person doing a sustainability job, but that the sustainability is just naturally part of every operations of the business. And actually quite an honor for me to return to this podium. 9 years ago, we've received an award from ReMA at the time under ISRI. And in that year, it was for a TV. We eliminated 30 screws, making the disassembly much easier at the recycling line, and as well as exploring some of the flame retardant additive reduced alternative materials into that product. And now we come, with another story with now a closed loop of cobalt as one of the many of the minerals. And I think that we still have lots of work ahead of us. So I'm hoping that we further our work in the circular economy, and that, whether it be 2 years or at least, within the next few years, we will constantly continue to showcase our commitment to sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. On that note, before we move to the Q&A, let me remind you that actually Samsung Electronics has been awarded the ReMA's 2025 Design for Recycling Award for their Galaxy S25 smartphone. Congratulations. These two executives were instrumental in making that move happen. What does that mean? Well, it means that the S25, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, incorporates recycled plastics, metals, rare earth elements, with over half of the cobalt in its batteries sourced from recycled materials, and I think 100% recycled paper used in its packaging.
Yes.
This award clearly honors Samsung and these executives for making recycling a core part of product design, supporting more sustainable and circular economy. And with that, thank you guys, and we probably should move to a Q&A session. Yes.
Design for recyclability. Can you talk about design for repair and maybe how that fits into the company's sustainability strategy, and maybe any recent examples of design changes to improve repairability or improve?
Yeah. I think one thing that we didn't really talk too much is about our self-repair program, which I think will sort of answer that too. We only introduced it like 3 years ago, but now we're in over 50 countries and continue to expand around the world as we make more local partners that can help us with part distribution. So we give genuine parts, manuals, videos to help our users to repair their own devices, right? We also have apps so you can self-calibrate your phone, make sure everything's working. And recently, in France, actually, all consumer electronic devices have to get sort of graded by this. It's called the French Repairability Index, which grades, are your parts widely available? Are they affordable? Can you repair your device with off-the-shelf tools, or do you have to buy like $100 tool set or something? And we continue to get the highest evaluation on that. So we absolutely think about repair from the product design stage at the very beginning of our product design stage through.
Maybe a follow-up. Does that index drive any decisions at the company? I'm curious how that plays in.
So it's something that's put in front of all of our executives every year. And our top executives, including our CTO, CEO, they are aware of what the kind of weaker points and stronger points are. And so we make a roadmap to address the weaker points. So, like if it takes 26 steps to get to the display for a certain device to repair the display, that's too much. And so we make a roadmap for, in next year or in 2 years, how are we going to redesign the product in order to make it easier to, for a regular person to repair that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's pretty impressive that you have full support from management to increase the cost of manufacturing. I have a question.
Well, I don't know if I can say
This cost.
Well, I guess we have support of management to hire people that focus on sustainability. So that's
Different cost. It's overhead cost.
Okay. My question is, have you done any studies for customer willingness to pay for your product in different regions of the world if you have a higher recycled content? How is it perceived by the customers and your experience with that topic?
So this is something that I always ask to other companies or other folks when I meet them, because I want that data so that I can put that in front of top executives. So I don't have anything that's been generated internally that I can discuss. But I think I have seen a lot of consulting studies out there, and I don't remember if it was Deloitte or McKinsey, but they will put out studies that say that certain, usually younger customers or customers in certain geographies are more willing to pay for customers for products that they have some sustainability sort of value. But it's tough.
So this kind of goes back to what I was kind of mentioning earlier, is that sometimes if you do a follow-up, the action doesn't quite match to the willingness and the concept, which is why I think I was kind of going back to an effort that's needed. Sometimes consumers will tell us that they are interested in sustainability. I think that group will proactively go and search. I think it's the remaining percentage of the group that we sometimes have to marry the benefits that they get in their hands, whether it's the product functionality or cost incentives, in ties with the sustainability messaging, that their action not only felt good about what benefited them, but also to the environment impact. And I think that in hand could help better elevate the overall sustainability commitment.
From my perspective, for what it's worth, I think that there's a huge time frame between the time a consumer buys a product to the time for them to get rid of it, particularly if it's a Samsung or one of the top smartphones. It takes a long time, which means that message that they may have received initially on how to recycle that product or return it is completely vanished. And I think that's probably one of the issues that the industry in general, the OEMs need to tackle. How do you keep that relationship with the consumer? And quite often you have a multitude of third-party players, the retailers, the distributors, the VARs, and that message gets lost. And so I think that's probably, as a consumer, that's certainly one of my problems for sure.
I think you made a good point, of which I kind of left out in our earlier talk, was we undermine, the most sustainable product is expanding the product longevity over any redesigned or renewed or a new device replaced, right? So the longer that we can have somebody hold on to that device and longer expansion. So now I think our focus has much been kind of ties in with the repair, is maintenance and repair, so that in those in between times, it reminds them of how they can expand the longevity, but also then using that opportunity to add in the messaging and what they're doing in the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm assuming you're engaging with the retailers and the telecom carriers as well. I mean, they're critically important in sort of creating that link? Because at the end of the day, they're very important in.
So unfortunately, with telecommunication companies, we have less say on how it operates with their messaging, but at least we have control over the consumers that come directly to us on our Samsung.com, and through that experience in their buying experience or an extended service plan, then we use those opportunities to continue to chime in with them.
Yeah.
Can you say that one?
How do we become approved recycling partner?
How do you become approved?
An approved recycling partner.
Oh, an approved recycling partner. Oh, in the U.S. I mean, if you've got, the right certifications and the right practices and the coverage that we need within the U.S. I'm assuming this is within the U.S. Landscape, and we're very open. We have such a large volume of e-waste that we have to manage and be responsible for that we can never do it with one or a small handful of recyclers. So we're constantly, open with any partners that are available to become one of ours. Yes, I can give you my contact afterwards.
I represent Quantum. We're actually a recycling partner of yours in Canada. We deal with a lot of OEMs, and there does seem to be an obsession with creating these supply chains that are circular for their own product. And, I think I understand to a degree why that's a desire, but like every single one seems to want to create their own supply chain to bring their products back. I'm wondering how we can get to a place where, the aluminum is the aluminum and the steel is the steel and the plastic is the plastic. And because that requirement to have it be fully closed loop to your brand does create a lot of cost and complexity. And I'm just curious, if there's is that desire around quality? Is it around just trying to understand that better?
That's a great point. And I'm going to take off my Samsung hat and put on my personal hat. I wish that we could make that true. As going back to our renewed or even closed loop or circular economy on some of this material sourcing, they undergo a very rigorous qualification and quality control. And so sometimes we don't know of what other competitor and other brands have that could be sourced back. And Daniel mentioned we obtain even certifications that can point to a traceability of that material because it came from our device. But if it comes from other devices, but I'm totally with you. If there's a way to expand that and that we can share that pool of products, I'm sure we will have much more environmental impact and a larger scale. And
especially in plastics. Right?
And one example, in a slight different note aside from recycling is, so Samsung led an international standard for USB common charger. I don't know if you know that. So, the biggest two phone devices using two different chargers made everybody, have to hold on to, you have a different one. Oh, I have a different, you have this type. And by just having that one common charge port, right, we were also able to eliminate that additional accessory because most likely you're going to have another charger sitting at home. And so you didn't need to buy one that came with another charger in every device. And so that reduced not only the packaging, the reducing of the unnecessary resource, right? So all of that is, I think, a great example how we can go towards that direction.
Every gram of reduction in a phone multiplied by, 250 million devices is a big deal for sure. I'm really glad that it was the lightning cable that lost. So I want to say that out loud. Also, I just want to encourage, we're in the process of going through your cell phone repair, like certification process. We ourselves have been refurbing cell phones for many years. I just wanted to comment that a little more juice behind that program. It has been a slog to just get, through it, a multi-year process. And it just feels like we're the ones that want to be onboarded, versus like Samsung saying like, yeah, we want as many partners that are certified and capable as possible. So just some constructive feedback, not a criticism.
That makes sense. And I think it has been, slower in the past. I think it's really only last year. I think last year there was or maybe the end of the previous year, there was a real increase in awareness of how important the used phone market is. And there's been a lot more studies now, a lot more data on that. And also from last year, I think where our top management has really taken a much closer look at that and created dedicated teams for this. And so right now, actually, I think only the U.S. and Korea are live with our new certified renewed program that Jenni mentioned. But I'm not aware of the situation in Canada, but I hope it's something that we can move very, very fast. Yeah.
I have a counterpart colleague in Canada, so feel free to drop me your name, your card, and we'll connect.
Hi there. I'm a happy Samsung S25 customer. And just out of curiosity, you mentioned design for recycling, but what about design for modularity? Like, so I purchased the upgrade specifically for the camera. Like, I had no other reason to upgrade my previous Samsung, but I just eventually got, I'm like, I needed a better camera, but it would be very compelling if I can just get, plug and play, take out a camera and drop in the new one.
Sure.
And then I don't have to do the upgrade and less waste in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that we're reviewing. I think people are probably aware of the Fairphone in Europe, which is a modular device, and there's demand for that device. There are people that buy. I think for us the challenge is that in order to kind of maintain our market, but I guess we're trying to make the most powerful phones possible. Also the most thin. We just announced our new Galaxy Edge phone, I think yesterday. So thinner phones, lighter phones, and there are a lot of trade-offs. So if you make something more modular, it's tough to make it as powerful or as thin, or you have to create more SKUs. So it's something that we're looking at, and it's just those trade-offs that we have to balance.
Hi, you mentioned that you want to more and more recycle metals like cobalt and such, and I'm just curious, what metals do you see the biggest challenges to recycle? So basically last in line, because they're so difficult to either process or recover, or maybe the chemistries are too difficult to replicate. I don't know.
I'm not sure if I'm in a position to answer that. I mean, we have all of our main metals by weight, kind of on our roadmap that we're working towards. I guess, like with aluminum, for example, we have, and with our newest device now, the aluminum on the outside of the device is recycled as well. But a lot of the aluminum that we use is an alloy, so that makes it more challenging to recycle for our future devices.
Hello. So one question that I had, and I guess it comes from like personal experience as well. You talked a lot about especially in developed markets, right? Like the ease of trading of devices for recycling. It's been my experience, for example, that a lot of people in different regions, let's say, for example, South America, might come to the US, buy a device, take it back. So have you seen, for example, a big discrepancy between where you're developing or launching these recycle efforts versus where you might see products pop up in bigger volumes like South America that are not as easy to recycle? And I guess the second part of that question is, does Samsung internally have any sort of metrics, for example, to all devices, let's say, S10 mobile phones and stuff like that might still be in existence or coming down the waste stream in other places that weren't sold?
I didn't understand. For example, like, because I mean, so in our collection program, to my knowledge, it doesn't matter if it's an S10 or S9 or S8 or whatever, but we will take it in, and that's globally in the countries that we do have the program.
But do you have any sort of metrics of globally X amount of S10s were produced?
Yes.
X number have been reclaimed already.
Not sure about reclaim yet. As mentioned, currently to my knowledge, the trade-in program is only offered in US and Korea right now. And my personal hope is that we can expand in other markets. But in terms of e-waste collection, we have goals and targets for every country where there is a law. So it's not just meeting the law, but what other efforts, voluntary efforts are we doing? And we set those targets. And as I mentioned, we have the privilege to have our CEO hold accountable to it, because if we don't meet it, he doesn't get his bonus. So, every all of those markets, we collect those data and then we actually publish it. So we have our total collection volume on our sustainability report.
One more.
Okay, last question.
Hi, I have a question about the raw material used in your supply chain. For example, a lot of the raw materials, whether it's alloy, resin, there's another material vendor for it. How do Samsung push them to emerge more recycled content, using more recycle in their own raw material size to increase the recycled content? And then if you push them to increase the recycled content, there's a lot of cost, resource development is needed. They're likely going to charge a premium for that. And how would Samsung navigate those discussions with the material vendors trying to charge a premium on the recycled materials?
So I'm not aware of like the full everything that our procurement team goes through, but in the past, so when I have seen studies of this, in general, so of course there usually is an increase in price. Not always, actually. For some materials, it's easier to get recycled material for the same price. It might only be a couple pennies. I think for anything where it's more than that, we're probably I don't want to say that we're waiting, but the longer that we do this, and the more volume that we have, the more products that we have with recycled materials, and the more companies that are do this as well, the more developed the supply chain is becoming for recycled materials, and the price difference, the price gap with virgin materials is also narrowing. And we're also seeing more suppliers that we're able to kind of compare or to put against each other. I don't think we're at least from what I've heard, I don't think we're necessarily pushing the suppliers to give us recycled materials. More, do you have it, or we look for new suppliers that do have that recycled material.
I think she has last question.
All right, one last question.
What currently happens to your end-of-life material, in particularly semiconductor components that you use in production? Where does it go now? Do you recycle it?
Sorry, so end-of-life?
End-of-life and material that is no longer used in production, basically semiconductor components, any kind of components that's used in your production. What happens to it?
So those byproducts are all fed into our recycling.
Is it recycled?
Renewed.
So you're not using it in the circular economy just to reuse it again?
I think the semiconductors, that's very challenging right now.
It's my specialty.
Thank you, everyone. So this has been a very compelling story, and we should encourage Samsung and any other company that's an OEM, particularly the big ones, to continue to do what they're doing. This is a great story. There's a number of things taking place. My experience, my 13-year-old kid wanted a phone. He wanted a brand new phone that cost thousands. Of course, it was very easy to go to Amazon and buy a refurbished one, nicely packaged, beautiful device at the end of the day. And it couldn't figure out that it was a refurbished one, of course. This is a booming market as well. So we've talked about sort of the strategy of what a major OEM is doing, but there's also demand. I don't know if you guys heard the previous presentation about demand in India for all sorts of raw material and refurbished products. It's the same thing happening, and this is a great market. So for those of you who are in that space, keep on the good work. I'd like to thank Jenni and Danielle. They came specifically today and leaving, I think, tomorrow. Jenni came from New Jersey, Danielle from Korea. And a big round of applause for their time to visit. Thank you.